Hello, everyone. Welcome in this webinar as a series of webinars organized by Nahrein Network at University College of London with cooperation with Chatham House. All the webinars dealing with cultural heritage from different points of view. And this webinar will talk about cultural heritage and higher education, which is very important for the heritage and for the culture. Because as you know, this topic, the cultural heritage, is multidisciplinary topic related to many degrees and many programs like architecture, like history, engineering, and so on, archaeology. So a lot of specialists maybe should know or have knowledge about those different topics to deal with cultural heritage. For me, I am a civil engineer. I am assistant professor of structural engineering at University of Kufa, but I have interest in two things: in improving the higher education, especially engineering education. I am the member of Iraqi Council of Accreditation for Engineering Education, and at the same time, I have great interest in cultural heritage. I was a member of the committee preparing the dossier for inscribing Wadi Salam to the World Heritage List. For this, I read a lot about history, read a lot about architecture, and so on to deal with such hard topic. Let me welcome the two speakers, Dr. Anna Kaiser from Austria and Dr. Ahmed Al-Imarah from University of Kufa. Dr. Anna will be the first speaker. She is a course director of a postgraduate master's program in cultural property protection at Donau-Universität Krems, Austria. She also is a reserve officer in the Austrian Armed Forces, fully trained as liaison officer for cultural property protection. Dr. Kaiser focuses on the development of cultural property protection training programs aiming at both the military and civil subject matter experts in order to enable both sides to effectively tackle CPP in times of armed conflict or natural calamities. Concerning the latter, Dr. Kaiser is manager for European Union funded projects dealing with cultural heritage protection during natural disasters. She lectures internationally on both the civilian and military aspects of cultural heritage and cultural protection. So welcome again to Dr. Anna Kaiser, and would you please share your screens to start your presentation? And I hope that we have certain questions and comments after this presentation. So Dr. Anna, now the panel is yours. Thank you very much.
I thank you for the warm welcome and introduction, and especially the organizers of this brilliant lecture series for having the lecture series and for having me invited to speak here this evening. It's a great honor to be here and speak about higher education and cultural heritage on a broad basis, kind of overarching before we focus down onto issues in Iraq. At the very beginning of my presentation, I'd like to start with a few ideas and thoughts about continuing education and lifelong learning, so that you know the basis where I come from, what's my background at Danube University in Krems, and then continue to the main topic of this evening, higher education and cultural heritage and its protection. And for the main topic, I've identified 5 issues I want to talk about, and we'll tackle them in detail later on. So that's where Krems is. It's about 80 kilometers to the west of Vienna, just to give you an idea of where I'm sitting at the moment. And this is how our university looks. An old tobacco factory, which has been reinvented into a university, a rather new one 20 years ago. And it's a university focusing on continuing education only. So we do not offer bachelor programs at the moment, but have students that come with a lot of experience from their day jobs, from their lives to us. And the average age of our students is 39 years. And they have, as I said, a lot of professional experience at the beginning of their studies already. So 30% of our students have more than 15 years of experience in their specific fields they are working in. So this is a great benefit and also a great challenge to kind of integrate their knowledge into our programs. But as I said, it's a benefit as well. So the faculty, teaching staff, they learn a lot from the students, as do the students from each other, coming from a number of different backgrounds in our programs. And I'd like to come back to that later. We have cultural heritage and its protection as one of our 4 main research fields at university. And what you see on the left-hand side of the screen, the yellowish part is cultural heritage. And we have it in arts and cultural studies, image science, but also building and environment. And that's where I come from, the building and environment department. And we closely cooperate with what you see in blue, continuing education research, and what you see in the middle of that circle, cohesive and innovative societies. So we strongly believe that it is important to treat cultural heritage and its protection not separately, but to put it in the very middle of our everyday life. We have a center which is purely focusing on cultural property protection, and we didn't name it cultural heritage protection, but cultural property protection, because we've based it on the Hague Convention for the protection of cultural property in the event of armed conflict from 1954. And you see the blue and white symbol, that shield, slightly blurred in the picture. And we have the understanding of cultural property protection that it's not only important during armed conflict, but also in preparation phases, not only for armed conflict, but also for natural catastrophes, for terrorism, but it starts at the everyday level. So it's also neglect on the everyday level that can damage cultural heritage, cultural property, and make it vulnerable to, for example, natural catastrophes. We do both teaching and research, and we also cooperate closely with our Center for Architectural Heritage and Infrastructure, and they've been focusing on UNESCO agendas, UNESCO World Heritage for, well, about 10 years or even more. You remember that we're quite a young university in Austria, but that's the background where I come from and where all the ideas I'm subsequently going to talk about come from. Well, I've already talked about threats to cultural heritage, and what was not shown on the slide before is the wanton destruction of cultural heritage that we've been witnessing over the last years. I already mentioned that I see continuing education as a big advantage. Thinking again of the more than 15 years that 30% of our students bring, more than 15 years of knowledge the students bring to the programs. So I think this is a very big advantage of continuing education. And especially in cultural heritage and its protection, since we've already heard in the very beginning in the introduction that cultural heritage is a cross-cutting topic. It doesn't stand isolated, and it needs a lot of different branches to deal with it. In my slide, you have conservation, law enforcement, architecture, military, heritage management, archaeology, histories, art, legal studies. It can be, well, you can add whatever you like, I think. Take all the professions you come from. You are here this evening for cultural heritage, for its protection. And I think that we find links to cultural heritage, but we find links to cultural heritage also in most of our jobs, if we think about it closely. And that's the background where I come from. Lifelong learning, continuing education, and a Center for Cultural Property Protection, which tries to tackle the whole topic from day-to-day issues until the very worst we can imagine, armed conflict. And based on that, I've asked myself, what can higher education do for cultural heritage? And this brings me to the 5 points or 5 boxes I've identified for this evening's lecture. On the one hand, there's education, which is rather obvious in higher education, I'd say. Then higher education and the institutions that carry it out can serve as a platform, not only for education, but also for research. And the whole package of education and research and platform leads to a number of benefits that can be identified. Benefits that cultural heritage holds and benefits that cultural heritage protection offers. And at the very end, I would like to say a few words about awareness and the raising of awareness concerning cultural heritage in general, but also especially its protection. And I'd like to start with the education. Postgraduate education, that's where I come from. What you see on the screen is the sortiment, so to say, of topics we tackle in our postgraduate master's program on cultural property protection. We include all the international humanitarian law, UNESCO conventions, obviously, but also crisis management. We have programs on collections and inventories as the everyday basis for keeping our cultural heritage safe and also presenting it in museums. We have ideas on identification of cultural property. What is it we are talking about? In addition, of course, to the definitions in the Hague Convention, in the UNESCO conventions. But we also have programs on material handling and building stability. What can we do if cultural heritage gets damaged in order not to damage it anymore? We do something about emergency planning for cultural heritage and try to tackle the whole issue, as already mentioned, in an interdisciplinary way and also with a hands-on approach. And there are a number of other universities that have cultural heritage related programs, and most of them have their special angle of tackling the whole issue, which I think is very good, since we have the possibility to create a huge network of experts also in teaching, but also in research. And then we can connect institutions dealing with cultural heritage and higher education very nicely, and they can support and supplement each other with a slightly different angle they have on cultural heritage and its protection or its management. At Krems University, we come the full disaster management circle, so to say. We deal with all the phases happening after or before an incident, the catastrophe strikes. We deal with the response phase, the recovery phase, mitigation and preparedness phase. And we always try to include as many entities, emergency responders, experts, museums, galleries, archives as possible to get as many different views as possible in teaching as well as in research. And that brings me back to my firm belief that cultural heritage protection should be a very hands-on approach in teaching, if not in research. I'd like to bring, or I tried to bring 1 or 2 case studies or small cases for each of my boxes, the 5 boxes I've identified. And in this case, for education, it's climate change and climate change-induced natural catastrophes and what they can do to cultural heritage, or what we can do to protect cultural heritage from them and to make cultural heritage more resilient. And I think important it is also for higher education to be research-based. What you see on the screen now are near and far future calculations for weather changes and extreme climate in Europe, since Central Europe, since this is a Central European research project. And in this research project, we've done an online summer school this year in 2020, online due to COVID-19 reasons primarily, but we've discovered that with the online open access version of a summer school, which was for 2 weeks, we've reached a high number of participants. We've had 60 participants in this summer school from basically all over the world. I mean, more than 50% come of Italy, since we have a very strong Italian partner in that project. But we've also had participants from Mexico, from Bosnia-Herzegovina, Canada, Chile, the Czech Republic, India, Pakistan, Argentina, Brazil. So basically really from all over the world. And I think that continuing education has a huge potential if we can make it open access. I think that all of us present know that education, and especially university education, higher education, can be very expensive. And we know that as well at the university in Krems, and have started including open access teaching programs into our research projects in order to make it more accessible. And with all the boom in online teaching, it actually seems to pay off, and we reach a really broad audience from basically all over the world in this case. So this is one point I'd like to stress. We all know Bloom's taxonomy on teaching, and that also brings me back to the research-based teaching. I think the higher we get in the pyramid, the better it is, obviously. And in our experience, we reach it with including our students who, as you remember, usually have a lot of experience they bring with them in continuing education. We like to include them whenever possible in our research projects to give them the possibility to come as high up in that pyramid as possible and to take as much with them as possible by actually being involved into our research projects and by being involved in a very hands-on approach to the topic of cultural heritage and its protection. The platform. I think higher education institutions can serve, or actually do serve, as a perfect platform for connecting all these different aspects cultural heritage holds. Like, once again, starting from archaeology to the military or conservation or law enforcement. How often do these these different branches, how often do these different branches actually talk together, work together, listen to what the other side has to say in their everyday lives? So I think that higher education with its programs can serve as perfect hub for connecting all the different entities needed in cultural heritage. Research for me has a close link to higher education. I've already talked about that and bring back the pyramid once again and the research-based education. And I think that research projects and research in cultural heritage, and especially in its protection, has a big chance of bridging gaps and connecting once again. So we try to deal with our research projects with everything threatening cultural heritage, from neglect to armed conflict. We cannot only bridge the gaps between these 4 bullet points you see on the screen, but we can also bridge the gaps between disciplines. The disciplines we've already seen before on the screen. I'm once again coming back to natural disasters. In this project you see on the screen now, Protect to Save, we mainly focused on dealing with natural disasters and protecting cultural heritage from natural disasters, predicting with climatology and climate modeling how the climate in Central Europe is going to change and which geographical areas in Europe are going to be prone to more natural disasters, and thus which cultural heritage is prone to be damaged in the future. But we've also developed emergency plans and prototypes for so-called cultural heritage rescue teams. And these cultural heritage rescue teams are based on already existing forces, for example, the Italian Carabinieri for the protection of cultural heritage. And we've tested the setup, the prototypes of these teams in the partner countries in Central Europe. And all of these partner countries, they have a different internal setup, who is responsible for cultural heritage, also who is responsible to react in catastrophes, natural catastrophes, which emergency responders arrive first at scene and are responsible to do what. So we had a very heterogeneous organization in all the partner countries, but the general structure you see on the screen worked for all of them. And the idea of this cultural heritage rescue team we've developed with a focus on natural catastrophes was to protect cultural heritage before disaster strikes, and to protect and recover cultural heritage during and immediately after the calamitous event. You remember the disaster management cycle. And what these cultural heritage rescue teams should also be able to do is to link the heritage community and the different emergency responders by having a basic knowledge on the operational procedures from both sides, if we can talk about sides in this case. And what I want to get at is that we've developed this for cultural heritage protection in natural catastrophes, but it also works, if necessary, in an armed conflict, and can also bridge gaps between the heritage sites and not the firefighters, for example, or civil protection, but if necessary, between the heritage site and the military force. So that's what I meant with bridging gaps in research projects, also between disciplines, but also different emergency responders or units, entities, and bring pictures to what I've just said. We've had a training on the left-hand side. This is a military unit training with our heritage specialists. And on the right-hand side, you have military units and firefighters training together for recovering cultural heritage in a fire, during a fire in this case, on the right side. Another very important point that needs to be stressed, I think, is what cultural heritage means to the people it belongs to. And there we go into the phase, or there we go very much into identity, what it is that we aim at protecting. I've brought you a few pictures, and I think that with research, we still can go much further in the way of identifying why cultural heritage is important and firmly linking it with identity of the people it belongs to, and also defining who are the people it belongs to. You see Italy on the left-hand side, Italy, the earthquakes of 2016, which hit Italy very hard. We've been there and talked to the people, and personnel from the Italian Ministry of Culture who was there immediately after the earthquakes, and who were rescuing and recovering the paintings, for example, you see in the bottom of the left side. They told us that the people living there, they wanted to know where the paintings were going, where their cultural heritage was going, whether it was going to be returned to them soon. And they were really happy when one church tower was set up again and the bells were rung at Easter time. And they said that only after they lost their cultural heritage, only after that their towns and cultural belongings were destroyed, they realized how important all this is for their identity. And that's something that strikes me as very tragic, that we need to lose something first before we realize how important it is for us. Going in the Near East, Afghanistan, there's an idea in the project carried out by Italian colleagues on kind of uniting all the different peoples living in an area by a common past. The question was, how far do we have to go back in time, or do we find cultural heritage that everyone is proud of and that everyone can relate to, that everyone can protect and build a sense of belonging on that? And a completely different project, but also dealing with kind of identity questions, is a project that just started now, which tries to connect the European Danube region from Germany to the Black Sea via its Roman heritage, saying we have heritage in common that stretches along the Roman Danube, which is the Roman borderline, and we have Roman heritage there. It's common in all the Danube countries from today, and can we use it to make the Danube region, which is one of the European Union's macro regions, make it more connected. And we're going to see how that turns out. But this is all in the big box, so to say, of identity. And I think we can do much more in terms of research to find out and to highlight how important cultural heritage is for identity. And that takes me to that slide, to the criteria that make cultural heritage important. And these are only a few criteria, but most of the topics related to cultural heritage, its protection, but also its destruction, can be linked to these 4 pillars. There's one: memory, identity, history, pride we take of cultural heritage, and dignity. But there's also the economy and tourism pillar. Then there's the pillar of different perceptions and also of manipulations. Cultural heritage gets into politics. And the 4th one is the monetary value, the theft, illicit trafficking, and looting. I think all of us here know that this has been happening widely over the last years. And these are criteria that make cultural heritage important, and I think that are rather important to keep them in mind. And that brings me to the benefits, that all the things, education and research, but also the platform, the benefits for cultural property and cultural heritage that they create. We remember the disaster management cycle, and I think that research and education are very good for the resilience of cultural heritage, be it built cultural heritage, movable cultural heritage, but also immovable cultural heritage. And the thing is that preparation is key. In this case, we do not want the museum to be swallowed by a river, in this case the Danube, which is prone to very high and devastatingly dangerous Danube floods. If we do research projects, if we educate in higher education, we can also do risk assessments for certain cultural heritage. We can think about safe storage sites, in this case in Cittaducale in Italy, developed after the earthquakes. But we can also learn from history. Here I took a picture of World War I and the in-situ protection set up in Venice. If we do training in education or based into research projects where we've developed training scenarios, we create knowledge, and this knowledge has the benefit of being brought out and spread to all kinds of people, entities, organizations dealing with cultural heritage. But there are also key messages, in this case from the military side, to bring that into the picture as well. That cultural property protection, for example, can save lives. And that, of course, needs to be research-based, not just said like that because I feel like saying that cultural property protection can save lives. But for that, we need the research. And once again, the criteria that make cultural heritage important, if you think about them, they hold a big benefit for cultural heritage itself. Even if we think only about the economy and tourism pillar, that's a benefit we can sell if we want to protect our cultural heritage, if we want cultural heritage owners to take care of their cultural heritage on a day-to-day basis and to not neglect it. Neglect, if you think of the graph I've shown you at the very beginning, also a threat to cultural heritage on a day-to-day basis. And the last of my 5 boxes is awareness. I think for higher education, it is very important to reach out, to get specialists on board, the hands-on approach, to make higher education open access and as available as possible, to conduct joint trainings and to link up different entities dealing with cultural heritage, with its protection, with its conservation, and also importantly, to get to know other sides always depending from where I come from, where the others come from. And everyone has a huge understanding and knowledge and standing procedures to bring onto the table in order to coordinate and cooperate for protecting cultural heritage. But I think it's also very important, well, here are some pictures for joint trainings to raise awareness. But what I actually wanted to say is that it's very important to also think about the future generations. We are in the 21st century. We have a lot of digital means to engage with the future generations, to engage with the public, with broad audience, and make cultural heritage and its importance understandable to as many people as possible. In our case, we've done this with a mobile video game and app for mobile phones, where the player is in charge of a cultural heritage rescue team and needs to recover and rescue a museum before it's flooded. So if you want to download it and play and see what you make of it if you succeed. But I think it's very important to include the future generations and also not to forget about intangible heritage, which is equally important, because heritage, in my point of view, is all about people, past, present, and future people, belongs to people, and without people giving meaning to it, it might just as well be a pile of dead old stones. And these were and are my 5 identified boxes. What higher education can actually do for cultural heritage and its protection. So to recap, see a lot of possibility in education, in the platform higher education institutions can provide, in research conducted, in the benefits education and research especially make and produce for cultural heritage and its protection, and maybe most importantly, the awareness raising box. If we are not aware of cultural heritage and its meaning and its power, then we might as well not start talking about it. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to a hopefully lively discussion.
Thank you very much, Anna, for this valuable presentation and valuable information about the cultural heritage from different topics. I remind the few number of attendees, I am sorry for that because of the hackers. I don't know why they attacked us. Okay, you can leave comments on chat box or talk about the second presentation. Thank you again, Anna, for this presentation, and let me move to the second presentation of Dr. Ahmed Al-Imarah. Second speaker is Dr. Ahmed Al-Imarah. He got his PhD in Higher Education Management and Quality Assurance from University of Bath, United Kingdom. Currently, he is Assistant Professor in Organization Studies at University of Kufa, Iraq. He has a lot of experience like international consultant on quality assurance in higher education management, also membership of FLAN, Future Learn Academic Network in United Kingdom. I know Dr. Ahmed gave a lot of efforts to improve education in University of Kufa and also in other universities in Iraq before he completed his PhD study in the same topic in University of Bath. Also, he got some grants from different organizations, like the grant titled Open Cultural Heritage Resources and Education, OCHRE, funded by Arts and Humanities Research Council at UK. Also, he got another grant to a peace narrative project funded by UNAMI, OHCHR, Human Rights Office. I think those grants started recently, and I hope it will have very good benefits for Iraqi cultural heritage and also higher education as well. Dr. Ahmed, if you please share your screen.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali, for this opportunity. And many thanks for Dr. Anna. Actually, her presentation is very rich. I'm sorry, I'm afraid my presentation will be too poor comparing with information that Dr. Anna mentioned in her presentation. Anyway, the outline of this presentation actually is that I would like to focus on three perspectives. Firstly, the global relationship between higher education and cultural heritage, and how that affects the relationship between Iraqi higher education and cultural heritage. And then the key impacts of higher education in Iraq and the successful projects that support cultural heritage in Iraq currently. So, first of all, the global picture of higher education and the relationship between higher education and cultural heritage is usually focused on higher education. Actually, we have several statements in this issue. Generally, education and training programs are not sufficient to support cultural heritage, while most programs currently focus on the training and just developing skills of people, because that's theoretical, seem to be theoretically more than practically. The approach of problem solving, also that's usually used in higher education, is not enough as well in cultural heritage like Iraqi cultural heritage. And there is another actually approach in this area, which is leisure education and cultural enrichment, like that used in rural education. It is a good attempt, but I don't know whether that can be suitable for Iraqi cultural heritage. So from these examples, we can talk about the three statements about the role of higher education in the world and in any higher education system. The first statement is that higher education should provide learning, training, creation, and dissemination knowledge and education in general. The second statement that depends on the mission and vision of university, which means that each university has different program comparing with other universities. From this approach or this statement, we can find actually a new area that can higher education support, like the labor market and scientific research and responding to the community services. From this approach, we can find at least a key area, which is community services, that can help us in supporting cultural heritage. The third statement that studies on higher education actually stresses is that higher education can support government, innovative management, entrepreneurship, and integrated research, economic, community awareness, and community culture development. So this means that the third statement is opening the door to support cultural heritage in the world. In this actually area that we need to focus on, that in Iraq we have intangible cultural heritage and tangible cultural heritage. So my focus are intangible cultural heritage. It's worth to talk about the role of UNESCO in supporting cultural heritage, as we know that UNESCO is one of the most biggest organizations that support education in the world. So the Forum UNESCO University and Heritage International Network created in 1995, and it's designed to support cultural heritage, natural heritage conversation. So actually it's connected with the common responsibility of the World Heritage Center of UNESCO. According to this forum, the UNESCO support cultural heritage in many universities, about the role of these universities in supporting cultural heritage in many countries. These countries, and actually they granted these universities the UNESCO chair related to the cultural heritage. And these countries are Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, China, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cyprus, Czechia, France, Germany, Hungary, Italy, Jordan, Mexico, South Korea, Japan, Norway, Pakistan, Palestine, Peru, Poland, Portugal, Russia, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, United Kingdom, and Pakistan. Unfortunately, there are only 2 countries from Middle East, which are Palestine and Jordan. And again, unfortunately, again, that they may be the oldest, and the countries that have the oldest actually civilization and heritage, which are Iraq and Egypt in the Middle East, did not get the UNESCO chair related to cultural heritage yet. I hope they can get it in the future. So the opportunities of collaboration between higher education and cultural heritage sector. So this is actual cooperation is still difficult and challenge to higher education institution. Actually, maybe we have one only area that can higher education support cultural heritage sector, which is through the postgraduate studies and research. Let's talk about partnership between higher education institution and cultural heritage institution. So institution need to offer, higher education institution need to offer comprehensive curriculum that support cultural heritage training and enrichment courses in variety of disciplines to address the society need. That's actually a very good statement. However, the partnership between higher education and cultural heritage often depends on the university initiated activities rather than cultural heritage initiatives, which means we have only one side of this relationship that can support cultural heritage. How about Iraq or higher education in Iraq and cultural heritage? The most attention of Iraqi higher education is, as I said in the beginning, on tangible heritage, but extremely less on intangible heritage. So the main problem currently, at least currently in Iraq, is related to people, which is intangible heritage. So we have now diverse religions, I mean, in the Iraqi society, which are Muslims, Christian, Yazidi, Sabin, and others. Also different ethnicity, which are Arab, Kurds, Turkomans, and Assyrians, and others. Accordingly, I think we need to focus much on intangible heritage, because the problems that Iraqi need to solve actually is relating to people. So what are the challenges of Iraqi higher education related to the cultural heritage? Several challenges obstructing the university's support to cultural heritage in Iraq. First problem is wars. I think we know that 4 wars happened in Iraq since 1980. The first one is in between Iraq and Iran. And the last one was with ISIS, which started in 2014, and I can say it's until now. So the second challenge of higher education is political challenges, which this is actually this is very complicated problem currently started after 2033, related to each group of people try to support, or I can say each party can support some groups rather than others, which is actually challenge to higher education and how affect cultural heritage. The third challenge is economical situation, which is relating to the we know the petrol price currently that face a problem as a result of COVID-19. Other challenges is specifically in higher education, like the limited fund support to global research in higher education. This is actually related also in the economic situation, and limited training for society services. We have a lot of training program in higher education, but most of these program is focusing on supporting higher education program and public services rather than society services. So at the same time, I think we have many opportunities that can help higher education to support cultural heritage. So higher education actors seek to develop new conceptions in relation to society services. A lot of leaders in higher education currently try to follow up each event or each problem happening in the society, and then try to highlight this challenge and how to support people in this regard. The response of institution to the social needs becomes one of the competitive priorities at the higher education institution. So we have currently actually competitive, very high competition between universities on how to support society, whether that relating to cultural heritage or other area of society needs. Postgraduate studies focusing on, especially in social science, on empirical research related to cultural heritage, as I said, and other area. However, these actually studies is still maybe limited and need to be developed more in the future. Community personalities, this is actually another view, which how society, the relationship between the university and societies, figures of society. So actually community personalities always to seek to participate in the common higher education activities, such as conferences and symposiums and others, which help them to be in touch with a new program of higher education and to how to benefit from this program. Society orientation towards social cohesion and belief in the unity of society and its ancient civilization is very common currently in Iraqi community. How about open cultural heritage resources and education? Actually, it is the project that led by Professor Robin Shields from the University of Bristol and assistant and Ahmed Al-Imarah and assistant Prof Waad Khalil Ibrahim from the University of Mosul. So this project actually focuses on the open education resources and how could support cultural heritage through a platform to raise academic skills and public awareness of cultural heritage. One of the main objectives for this project is overcoming ISIS impact. Despite a long historical traditional of pluralism, pluralism and cohesion, the effects of war and recent ISIS insurgency have led to increasing fragment and the social fabric. The division is evident in mass and social media, which increasingly invoke a discourse in which the rights and entitlement of ethnic and religious groups are represented as in competition with one another. This is actually one of the biggest challenges to the cultural heritage in Iraqi society. So our actually project focus how to reduce this fragmentation and overcome the ISIS impact. That is because Iraqi society, including all these groups of people, live in Iraq for hundreds of years without any challenges. So these challenges came as a result of ISIS effect. So one of the main goals of our projects is developing social cohesion in post-conflict environment, also capacity development and training to the Iraqi academics. So we have actually 10 participants from 2 universities, which are the University of Kufa and University of Mosul. And we are working on developing their skills in relation to open education resources. And then that will help them to create a new courses by using some resources of open education like MOOCs to produce these courses to the society and according to their culture. Academics should engage with a community of learning outside of the formal university. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 affected this goal now, and we're just trying to overcome this challenge. Participants create an open education resources in their discipline and engaging a given community of learning with their creation. And also we are seeking to produce empirical research according to the result of this project. The challenges of actually that face us in this project, as I said in the beginning, that COVID-19, because we can't meet people face to face and then just try to collect data from online. And partnership between global and Iraqi universities are difficult because they may operate differently. For example, Iraqi higher education is more centralized one. The UK has different, actually, the universities like the University of Bristol has a different system. Thank you very much for this opportunity and for listening and attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed, for this valuable information, especially about your project now we are working on. And I hope all success for you in this important project, you and Dr. Waad and others participating in this project. So let me start now. Dr. Waad now joined us, unfortunately, at the end of the presentations. So let us start the discussion or comments or any questions from the attendees. Okay, until they prepare their comments or questions, let me ask some questions. I will start with Anna. I know your experience now. I think you are coordinator of the master program of the cultural properties protection. And as you mentioned that this is look like something dealing with the physical things related to cultural heritage. So as you know, that the new let me say education system in the 21st century is that focusing on the skills of the graduates rather than the knowledge only. So the skills is very important. So what about the education system or education methods or used in the master program? Did they deal with such things that improve the skills of the students during study?
So yes, the basic idea of the setup that we follow at not only the Center for Cultural Property Protection, but also whole Danube-Universität Krems is to improve the skills. So this is what we try to reach with the what I called hands-on approach, to actually have the students engage, and we try to kind of put all the, let's say, theoretical lectures into online format, since we are, well, continuing education university, and all our students have usually a 38 to 40 hours job. So we try to accommodate that by putting as much of the theoretical stuff online for pre-learning phases as possible. And the few module weeks they come to our university, and we do the really practical stuff and have them engage as much as possible. In my case, cultural property protection, is it material handling or actually developing emergency plans for a whole museum. They have the theoretical knowledge when they start with it, but then they have to do it and have to further their skills by just basically doing it, doing the job. And if we stick with the emergency planning, in the end, actually also testing the plans with emergency units and the museums or galleries they've been developing it for.
Okay, great. Now let me move to Adam. Adam, please, yes, now you can give your comments to the speakers, please.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you, Professor Ahmed and Dr. Kaiser. And it was just unfortunate that the talk was disrupted initially, because I'm sure there would have been many more people online. But first of all, thank you for that. I mean, there were a number of things that I wanted to pick up on, but I also wanted to pick up on yours, Ali, about the skills that you were talking about, because in fact, I mean, I'm one of the lucky people, because I was able to attend the summer university, which Dr. Kaiser's university runs in cultural property protection on 2 occasions. And I just did the climate change one, which was superb, and I'm sure tremendously of relevance to you also in Iraq, because I suspect you face many of the same challenges. So yes, so that is certainly one skill that, you know, there is an outreach program that somebody like me has benefited from, which was truly wonderful. But I'm just looking at some of my notes and comments, and basically, I mean, yes, like this notion that CPP, cultural property protection, can save lives, which is so very important. I mean, I don't know whether you yourselves are aware, but the Lloyd's Register Foundation, Lloyd's as in the shipping, actually has a very, very large grant to address that bridge of property protection and saving lives, which is truly extraordinary. But what I wanted to pick up on was actually, and I'm just looking at my notes here, basically the issue of sort of grassroots awareness. We've been hearing about this at university level, but in the space of 48 hours, Venice has flooded again. And they were not able to put up the defensive MOSE system in time, in which case, and I mean, I would defer to the speakers, in which case, in the space of 48 hours, the local population has to act in and of its own accord. And they have to be suitably aware of what they can do rather than to rely upon, in this case, the authorities, the mechanism of a barrier that is going to save their livelihoods, that may protect monuments as well. So in that sense, I would like to ask about grassroots awareness such that you're not complacent upon the authorities, that everybody is aware that they have a role to play and that they too can act. And it may not be perfect, but they can at least engage and prevent further calamity. So I mean, I would like to put that to Professor Ahmed, who was talking about higher education, and also to Dr. Kaiser as well, because I mean, both your institutions were talking about education at a more formalized level, as well as raising awareness. So where do you begin with the raising of the awareness?
Yes, thank you, Adam, for this comment. And let me move to Ahmed, if you have any answer for Adam comment.
Yes, thank you very much. I think, of course, higher education, as I said in the beginning, that higher education focusing in education in general, but if we have some challenges in the like Iraqi challenges related to cultural heritage, and because we had many wars and how these wars affected society, who can support society? I think the main responsibility, of course, to the government and then to higher education, because higher education can design and provide courses that support society according to the need of this society or the need of this challenge. For example, talking about the skills that can we support higher education, I think, by the way, we have many actually departments that are specialists in this area, and then some events that, for example, invite people, figures of society to this event, and then actually provide them in some skills about how to manage these conflicting between each other, between these groups. At the same time, just to support how we can build trust between each other, rather than focusing on each group separately. So I think we have a very wide area to actually to higher education to be interactive with the society, with cultural heritage specifically.
Yes, thank you, Ahmed. Anna, if you have any addition to that point.
Yes, I think I would like to answer that with a question, maybe also to all of us. Following up on the question, where do we start to raise awareness? And if we only have 48 hours of recovering Venice, that was the example, or I take it to my area, to a World Heritage Area of Wachau, which is along the borders of the Danube and very prone to Danube floods. We have flood prevention systems, of course, but they might also break if we are unlucky. And the question I would like to ask is, have we lost the common sense of helping ourselves? Two examples I bring from my area. So when the Danube floods, there is this protection system, but there is also the fire brigades and also the army who start filling sandbags and building up additional barriers. And before the protection system was fully erected a few years ago, the fire chief, I think it was, or was it the army? I don't know. One of them said, we have to guard our sandbags because the people living here, they are coming and stealing all our sandbags to protect their homes. We are sure of that. Well, they guarded their sandbags, and the next day, they actually found out that the people living there were bringing them sandbags and helping them filling the sandbags, because the people who have lived there and have known the Danube floods very well, they had already protected their own houses and now had spare labor force, so to say, and started bringing sandbags to the military and the fire brigades, who actually feared that they might be stolen from them. So they had the knowledge and they actually acted and did something to help and help themselves. On the other hand, staying in the same area, we have a number of high quality museums in the Wachau, housing millions of worth of paintings. And if we only have 48 hours and no help from central government or military or firefighters, or maybe the museum director is not there and he or she can't take the decision, do we evacuate or not from the Danube flood? Then who does? And I'm sure that all those people who live here, who were so happily giving away their sandbags and helping with the sandbag barrier, they are not going to evacuate the museums and the paintings, because it's millions of worth. And I'm sure that most of them, all of them, are actually afraid, if something happens to the painting while I carry it out, am I to blame? Am I to pay? And who is coordinating that? So that's, I think, a very, very difficult question to tackle. How far do we go in helping ourselves with our culture, and where do we stop? Because we have some legal issues that we fear. Where do we start to raise awareness, or where does our common sense of helping ourselves end or start?
Yes, thank you. And also I may add another thing. It depends maybe, Adam, on the value of the heritage to people. And sometimes when I'm thinking in the value, maybe, let me say, there are two words, the value and the price. There are two things. It's something the people, the ordinary people, they are always thinking in to improve their lives. But at the same time, they have identity, cultural identity. And they want to keep this identity to the next generations. So this two, let me say, two things which sometimes maybe conflict each other, sometimes maybe work with each other, affecting the people's life. So in the war times, for example, or on the disaster times, for example, always those two things affect the people's life. So for this, let me move to Dr. Ahmed, and I have also a question for you. Thank you, Adam, for your comment. Regarding your project, I know that you are working about the intangible heritage and about this thing I talk about, that the identity and, for example, the values like the coexistence between people. And let me also welcome Dr. Waad, your partner. Unfortunately, he joined us after the end of the presentations. And also I asked him if he has any addition about the project. As you know, Ahmed, that there is one of the rights of the people, what is called the right to culture, which is part of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is Article 27. It states that everyone has the right to freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share in scientific advancement and its benefits. So a part of the human rights, now we have the cultural rights. Did Iraqi people now, especially those students in our universities, I know that they are taught every year a course in human rights. Did this course contain something related to the cultural rights, to the identity, to the coexistence between identities, and so on?
Thank you very much, Dr. Ali. Of course, as I said, according to the human rights, each people, each person has the right to in his belief and her belief and her culture. But we don't talk about that, rather than talking about the conflicting between these cultures. So the problem here, actually, because each group looks at themselves as better than others, or maybe just to protect themselves rather than others. They don't trust each other, which means that we have conflicting. As I said, this is just actually temporary problem. It started with the ISIS in 2014 because the Iraqi belief, Iraqi culture is very different in the past. So currently, our role at the university as with the student, of course, we don't have this conflicting at the university. I think you know that, because the culture of university and the university is very different. So there is no opportunity to anyone to talk about that, whether than that student or academic staff. The problem actually is only in the society between people that live far away from the university culture. So our roles, that, as I said actually in my presentation, that we need to go out to university. We need to meet those people. We need to talk with those people. We need to understand the culture of these people, and then how to design courses that is special, can be specialist for those people, which means not academic courses, maybe I can say general courses.
Yes, like Anna mentioned, that there is a program of continuous education which may be presented for different people, maybe local people. Yeah. So let me move to Anna. Can you give us an example of this continuous education, for example, workshops or courses given to public people in Austria or elsewhere in Europe?
So basically, the University for Continuing Education, and that's how I connect to what Ahmed just said, is focused on higher education. So we actually, most of what we do is university centered, and we get our students with the years of professional experience that I've shown, up to more than 30 years of professional experience, and they continue their education at our university. But during the last years, we've, as you said, also tried to reach out and reach not only the students who actually come to us at the Danube-Universität Krems, but to go to the people, find and define and find local stakeholders, future generations, and to implement our research projects with them, or our findings, our education, and break it down to a level that they can actually use on the maybe not day-to-day basis, but things that they are interested in. So we've done children's universities, starting really with the next generation primary school children on natural protection, cultural heritage protection, engaging them in these topics. But we've also joined forces with local tourism guides, but also laymen interested in history and actually doing kind of research themselves in old archives, local stories, bringing together local stories. And we've done guided hiking walks together with them, implementing our knowledge on what happened in that area from the cultural heritage protection point of view. This also might state, to bring one example, wartime again, this time Second World War, where we've taken them on hiking tours or joined forces for hiking tours. They told us what they found in local archives, and we told them we found this and that in military archives, and this was how during World War II this specific cultural property, cultural heritage would have been protected or was protected. So that's how we try to get the information on cultural heritage and its importance and protection out to as many people as possible, and continue their education, even if they don't come to us to study.
Yes, yeah, thank you. To make the knowledge is easy and can be reachable for everyone, yeah. Any other comment or question from attendees? Okay, let me, at the end of this session, and let me apologize again about what's happening in the beginning of the session. And I hope that we can meet again to discuss this very important topic for Iraq and also for the globe. And thank you for the speakers, Dr. Anna Kaiser and also Dr. Ahmed A. And thank you for all, and see you soon. Thank you very much. Keep safe and healthy also.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks to you.